And to be popular, you kind of had to suppress your Asianness. I would bring Asian food to school. Teammates would be like, ew, what's that? It stinks. The talk about the guns and the drugs, you can't have that here. Sometimes Viet Kieu are seen as like traders of the land or something, but it just culturally feels bizarre.
Hi there, nice to meet you. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Truong. In Vietnamese, you can say Truong. I'm an indie pop artist from Montreal.
What brings you here?
Basically, in Canada, they have like grants and it kind of helps artists like fund projects and stuff. One of my songs back in the day blew up in Vietnam a little bit, so I'm here to kind of promote my brand identity in Vietnam.
So were you born in Montreal?
So yeah, I'm born in Montreal. We were out here for like 3 months, I think. Like been there all my whole life. I moved to Toronto for a bit, also interned in LA. So those are kind of the places I stayed a little bit longer.
How did your parents migrate to Canada from Vietnam?
Like a lot of people, it's during the war. Actually, it was right before the war. Like some of my aunts and uncles were students. I think they kind of had the sense that things weren't going well in Vietnam. So they started studying abroad and then they brought everyone over right before the war.
So you've been here for 3 months, correct?
Yep.
Have you been anywhere else in Ho Chi Minh City? And what have you, I guess, learned or gained while being in Vietnam?
So I went up to the north to Hanoi for a week, mandatory trip, because why not? One of my friends out there kind of showed me around. His family does like stuff in touring. So we went to Mok Chow also. And funnily enough, they asked me to do like a kind of like a tourism kind of jingle. So like I'm working on that about Mok Chow. So that was interesting. But in Ho Chi Minh, what I've been doing is networking, making music with artists out here, trying to check out the scene, posting content, and trying to grow a fan base here, and trying to understand the music scene here. I guess that's the biggest thing so far that shook me the most is like, I didn't really know it was like this. It's almost like New York. It's super busy. There's so many events, so many collectives, so many artists. Everyone's doing something and you got to do a lot, to keep up.
What was it like growing up in Canada as a Vietnamese Canadian?
I think it's interesting and I think this applies to like Asian Canadians overall. Montreal is somewhat diverse. It's up there. It's pretty good. Like the policy on diversity in Canada is like called a melting pot where they kind of just want to take all the cultures and make one culture out of it. And there's like pros and cons of that, but like it kind of erases all the subcultures, right? I went to a school, like a kind of like a preppy school. It was really white, and to be popular, you kind of had to suppress your Asianness. I would bring Asian food to like school, and at the cafeteria, I was on the basketball team. My teammates would be like, ew, what's that? It stinks, And even till this day, like I feel like I like Vietnamese food, but I never crave it. And I think it might be trauma. You know what I'm saying? Like I come out here and I do eat Vietnamese food, but I feel like I need to eat non-Vietnamese food because like otherwise I wouldn't be able to function. But like I don't know, I think it dates all the way back to like elementary school, high school, where people would like make comments about my food all the time. So there's stuff like that. The stereotypes about Asians being nerdy and stuff like that, like very present in Montreal. The type of like discrimination you get is like very covert, very microaggression, because like otherwise people don't say this shit to your face. A lot of assumptions of like who you are because you're Asian. I play basketball, for example, like I always have to like prove myself a little bit harder because people would just assume that I'm soft because I'm Asian. I feel that's the thing. I feel as though Asian hoopers could probably relate to this.
I feel like the whole bringing your food experience and I guess other kids saying that it smells, that is such a universal Vietnamese experience. I had a friend in Denmark, another friend in Australia that shared that experience as well. Even in America, I'm like, it's all coming together.
Like what about California? Because there's so many Viets out there.
Well, in California, it has the largest Vietnamese population outside of Vietnam. I think under 1 million or something like that. There's like San Jose, there's Orange County. But if you're in those areas, because it's a Vietnamese community, it's not a problem. But I grew up in the suburbs, like mostly white people. I never brought my lunch to school, but I know if I were to, I would have experienced that for sure.
I'm just trying to think like, what were the foods that really shook people the most? It was like weird, because like sometimes like bánh bao is pretty fucking normal, you know what I'm saying? But I remember like one of my friends ate bánh bao and just like was like gagging. And I was like, what? That's so weird. But yeah, that and like bánh bột lọc, like people found that super nasty.
Yeah. I think anything that has like a fermented smell is gonna chip out the white people's palate because their palate's pretty bland. But yeah, that's a universal Vietnamese experience. You know what's so funny? Now that we're adults, like Asian food is so trendy now. Like, oh my god, pho and banh mi.
See, ties back into like the kind of covert like discrimination or whatever in Montreal. It's like there's like Asian restaurants in Montreal, but there's a lot of Asian fusion restaurants where white people would like kind of make Asian food bougie or clean or whatever. And those were would pop and go crazy, you know, and white people love going to those. So those would like get super popular, you know, and it's just like, it's so strange to me. Like, you know, you don't like Asian stuff, but you like Asian stuff, you know, you like Asian stuff done by white people more than Asian stuff done by Asian people.
There's a couple stories. In England, there's this restaurant somewhere in the UK where I guess they trademark the name Pho restaurant. Did you hear about that? Yeah, that's crazy. And I guess they're going after...
Did you see the photos of what the pho looks like?
That's not pho. I think it was like vermicelli noodles that they were using. And I guess they were sending letters to Vietnamese mom and pop shops like, oh, you can't use pho in your name or some restaurant's name. They tried, but I think their trademark got taken down.
I did the same as you, just read through comments and stuff and watched the videos on TikTok. But I did think it didn't go through. Everyone was enraged about it. And well, not everyone, but a lot of people, enough people, which is good, you know. But still, the restaurant's super popular and whatever. And it's crazy because it's a kind of disgrace to pho. Coming from like, you know, North America, like the understanding of hip hop culture is really different than coming here. It's kind of confusing here. I feel as though like hip hop here kind of lost its ties back to the origin of what hip hop is. I don't know. I don't like the word cultural appropriation or whatever, but it just feels kind of like cosplay.
Here?
Yeah.
Hip hop?
Yeah. I see, that's why I don't want to know if I want to get into it because it's kind of like crazy. We went to like music conferences and they kind of ranked the most popular music in Vietnam. Number 1 is mainstream pop, but number 2 is hip hop. Hip hop is huge here and they have their own hip hop scene. But it's like, what I mean by like cultural appropriate, go ahead. Like, you know, the dreads, like the whole like American like clothing style. You go to a hip hop show, you'll see a lot of them. It's tricky because like I get it, they really like what they're seeing, but I feel like the cultural exchange isn't there because African American, like Black Americans, didn't come here and instill hip hop here. It's just people kind of like shopping online for a new style or a new thing, but it's not really like that. It's much more complicated. And that's kind of the richness of hip hop. It's about education, right? But I feel as though that education is lacking in the hip hop here. It's just people copy pasting things they see online. It's like a meme almost. The talk about the guns and the drugs, you can't have that here. Like, why are you talking about guns and drugs in your music if you don't?
Yeah, that's right. You know? That's interesting because drug is illegal here.
But they say the government kind of like bans certain topics from music, but because they're using slang, they don't see it that way. But they like, you know, it's just bizarre to talk about drugs if you don't do drugs. Well, people talk about like lean in music here, but you can't get lean here and you don't make like double cup drinks here. Like, so I just don't get why they're talking about that. Or they make like gun sound ad-libs, but no one here has guns and they're not part of gangs. So like, I'm just so confused. That's the thing though. Like, it sounds cool. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. Like, it sounds cool. I feel as though it's so interesting because the technical skill is there. Like, the ad-libs sound cool. They fit in the music, but it just culturally feels bizarre. I just can't, I'm trying to think of like, since you're not into that as much, like an analogy that would make sense. Imagine non-Koreans doing K-pop and it being like super trendy in their area. It's just kind of weird.
Oh, there's that in America.
Yeah, they're trying, but it's not super popular yet.
In America, it's very popular, K-pop.
But for a group of white, say like a full-on K-pop group of all white singers being mainstream is not a thing. But imagine in Vietnam, hip-hop is kind of like that. That's what I'm saying. Vietnamese hip-hop is huge. It's the second most popular genre. And when I said hip-hop, I don't mean like American hip-hop is huge here. It's Vietnamese hip-hop. So all these people I'm talking about are Vietnamese people doing this. Okay. So that's what's confusing. They're copying and they're doing their own version, but they talk about the same things without experiencing any of those same things.
I think a lot of it has to do with Vietnamese. They adopt a lot of cultures from other cultures, like Chinese culture, American culture. Yeah. They got a lot of influences from China, but it's a lot, like you're saying, yeah, you're right, copy and paste.
Well, they were colonized by China for a hella long time, so I guess that does kind of make sense.
What was your introspective while being here in Vietnam? Like, what did you take away?
Pace, like pacing yourself. I don't know if it's like North America or if it's just who I am, or maybe it's like my family's upbringing because my family's like super intense and academic, tiger parents or whatever. But I always just like feel like I'm scrambling to do better and like, you know what I'm saying? Every single second I had, I always thought that I had to put it into getting better at something. I felt as though coming here, I found a better pace and understanding the importance of like just balance and seeing how that affects me and my career in a positive way. It's hard to explain because it just kind of sounds like some Zen bullshit or whatever, but by doing less, you achieve more sometimes just because you enjoy it more, you know?
What's your hot take of Vietnam?
Everyone says that, like, I came in November, right? Everyone said that's the worst time to visit, but I actually like it better because it's not super hot. It's the end of rainy season, both like physically and metaphorically. It's not that hot in the sense that it's not super busy, and I actually like that more because Saigon gets so busy, right? Because I came during this time, people had more time to chill and hang out, and I was able to meet people. But I feel like if I came during the summer, everyone would be so busy with their own shit that they couldn't like meet up. So yeah, coming in November is actually really cool.
Do you feel a stronger connection to your roots or culture since being here?
Like, the answer is obviously yes, but I'm just trying to figure out how. I guess it just helped me unearth and understand more and figure out my own lane in this, because in a lot of ways I come to Vietnam and I see myself as an outsider here, obviously, like I'm sure you do too to a certain extent, but it helped me carve my own lane and understanding what it means to me to be Vietnamese, you know, and to be Vietnamese in the diaspora. So I think it's helped with that. More reference points, you know, like now that, like, you know, I could see like how school works here, how food works here, how the culture is, and just like seeing where I fit with every single thing, you know, kind of helps me define my own understanding of what it means to me to be Vietnamese/Vietnamese Canadian.
Do you feel like an outcast here?
Yes and no, you know, like I feel as though, like, I guess the word I would use maybe a little bit exotic or something, like I'm different, but like people are still super friendly and welcoming, so I wouldn't say outcast.
What's it like making music in Montreal versus here in Vietnam? What's the difference? How has your experience been?
Overall, it's honestly weirdly the same. Like, I would say, like, studio sessions are studio sessions, you know, it's always fun making music. Artists just, like, their eyes light up when they're in the studio because that's the fun part. But I think culturally there's a difference between North American and Vietnamese people, where Vietnamese people are very grateful. And I think that's really nice. When you're an engineer, okay, I'm not saying anything about anybody, but say you're an engineer in North America, you get a lot of clients that are kind of really bossy and that just think that because they paid you whatever, that, like, you know, they can, like, boss you around. Like, but in Vietnam, like, I don't feel that as much. It's collaborative. People are chill. People are nice and grateful. The amount of times I had a proper thank you for recording the people, I think that's nice. You know, the little bow, they dap me up, then they do a little bow, then they're like, I'm so happy I met you, you know, like, I'm like, okay, that's nice. And it's, I guess, motivating. It's nice and makes it a fun, better experience for the whole team making music.
Have you ever experienced, like, how do I word this?
I think I know what you're saying, but I'm not sure if I...
Okay, read my mind. What do you think I'm saying?
Are you saying, like, not racism, but Viet Kieu-ism? Like, do people treat you weird because you're not, like, from Vietnam?
Oh, no, but that's a good question.
Okay.
Do they treat you weird?
Yeah, I feel as though, like, I mean, not weird. Like I said earlier in the interview, like, I feel a little exotic here. You know, like, people are like, oh, you're Viet Kieu. And there's, like, pros to that and cons to that. But something that does actually bug me is the accent thing, you know? Like, I actually speak Vietnamese and understand Vietnamese fully, but because of my accent, people will refuse to speak to me in Vietnamese sometimes, like, a little contentious. So I feel like this happens more in Hanoi. And I would go to a restaurant, right? And I would speak Vietnamese. They would speak Vietnamese. I fully understand them. I answer in Vietnamese, but then they change to English and they insist on speaking English, but I don't understand their English. You know, or sometimes they don't even understand my English. I don't know. It's fine if you're doing that to help me out, but if you're insisting because you think my Vietnamese sucks and your English is, I don't know. That's, I don't know. It, like, gets me a little cheesed.
A little language barrier.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, like, can Vietnamese tell if you're Vietnamese? Is it native? You pretty much answered it. Yeah.
It's funny because, like, Mando, who I came to Vietnam with, I speak more Vietnamese and I understand Vietnamese. I write and read Vietnamese, but she has the accent. So people full on speak to her in Vietnamese, but then I start talking and they refuse to speak to me in Vietnamese because of my accent. And it's like, interesting. More in Hanoi, but a little bit here too. And, like, I think sometimes it's because they're helpful and they're trying to be nice and they think I can't speak, but sometimes I feel like they don't want to speak to me because they hate my accent. You know, it's like almost like sometimes Viet Kieu are seen as like traders of the land or something kind of vibes. That's sometimes I get those vibes.
I mean, you're not considered a Viet Kieu. You're like an overseas Vietnamese like me.
I don't know, because like Viet Kieu is like the meaning of the word has changed. Like for people in Vietnam, they refer to Viet Kieu as people who left Vietnam. But like I've heard in North America, people just use Viet Kieu to refer to the Vietnamese diaspora. Like maybe we didn't leave, but our parents left, you know, kind of thing.
Also, I think maybe they refuse you because they want to, any chance that you get with speaking English, they'll take take it. But also because you're quote unquote not native, overseas Vietnamese, Viet Kieu, one of those. They do have a bit of a resentment, but also some of them, not all of them, natives, Vietnamese, they see Viet Kieu's like, I guess also with foreigners, it seems like, oh, if we give them good service, if I speak to them in their native language, English, they'll tip us more or something like that.
That's why I said that sometimes it's like, if it's to help me out, that's cool. But sometimes, like, I would borderline get into arguments about this.
Oh, yeah?
Like, they would refuse to speak to me in Vietnamese. Because I was like insisting, speak to me in Vietnamese. Okay, I don't know if this is a hot take, but another like Vietnamese thing that people do is a lot of times they're super critical of something, but then they want you to get better at it. That's so Vietnamese. My parents are like that. They're not from Vietnam, but like sometimes they'd be super critical about something, but also want you to get good at it. Like, I don't know, sometimes, for example, doing chores, they would say you suck at dishes and then ask you why you don't do dishes. I get that for Vietnamese so much. People would like, say shit when I speak in Vietnamese, but then they're like, oh, it's a shame you can't speak Vietnamese. But like, you're literally telling me not to speak Vietnamese. Like, it doesn't make sense sometimes, but it is what it is.
And then there's other incidents. In America, you can't fat shame someone, but here we'll just like openly like fat shame someone like, oh, you're too fat, blah, blah, blah. But that's such an Asian thing. They do this in China, but they want you to get better. Yeah. They want you to better yourself.
I never compared those two things, but now that you're saying it, it kind of makes sense. I think the logic is that they want to shame you into improving yourself.
Yeah, they have a different approach. Last question. Any advice or messages you like to share for any overseas Vietnamese Viet Kieus out there that I guess want to come to Vietnam to explore more about their culture and their roots here?
The first thing that came to mind is like, when you come over here, have a lot of probiotics, eat bland foods at first. Because like I had like food poisoning like halfway through my trip. And like, I didn't know this before, but when you get gastro and tinnitus, I don't even know how to say the full word, but gastro. When you get gastro, your stomach is actually fucked for like weeks after. Like, it takes time for it to fully heal back. So, and that kind of ruined my trip because like I had to eat bland food for a while, midway through my trip. But yeah, eat yogurt because they have probiotics and stuff. Like, it helps you get train your stomach for the food here. It's like a stomach issue, but it's like a stomach virus, I think. An illness that's caused by a stomach virus. But basically, symptoms are inflammation in my stomach lining, which makes it impossible for me to digest food. So I would have to eat really easily digestible foods to kind of chill it out for a while. But also other symptoms, vomit, diarrhea, whatever, all that.
For anybody that does run into that situation, what advice would you give to them to, I guess, heal themselves or to get better?
Get travel insurance. Yeah, get a good one. I mean, like, ours was cool. Like, we just had to be on the phone with them for 2 hours. I was like on the hospital bed making sure that they would pay for this before I go in. And then they're like, yeah, okay, we're good. We're covered. Then I'm like, okay, all right, I can go. But travel insurance, right? Like, otherwise it would cost like $1,000 or something. Yeah. Yeah.
What do they do to cure you? Do they just give you pills or?
So I went in there, they did check up for a few things. Like, I was also scared, like my family is full of doctors, so I asked for that advice first. They said check my blood as well in case it might be malaria or something. So I had a bunch of checkups. I had like ultrasound, blood tests, other tests. Yeah, and then they also gave me like, electrolyte like solution through my body, then a lot of medication and stuff.
What food did you eat that might have caused?
I don't know. Because like none of the food I ate was that crazy, but it might be cumulative. Okay, this like in retrospect it's pretty stupid, but like I had these fruits that were lying around for a little bit too long and I didn't want to throw them away and they still looked okay, but I ate a bunch of bad fruits, not bad fruits, but borderline fruits. The last meal I ate before this all happened was like on the street, chicken and rice. It could have been the fruits,
Sure.
So it's kind of hard to tell, or accumulation of everything. And then I ate a bunch of bland food. I got better, but then I ate something and it relapsed.
Okay, something I've noticed, the fruits here compared to America, because I don't know how it is in Canada, but there's a lot of preservative in the fruit. So I was used to like, oh, this banana is going to last me a week or two. But here you have to eat it within like a few days or it'll get moldy.
Maybe.
Because of humidity and stuff and it's hot here.
That probably is, yeah, it probably was the fruits, but yeah, don't leave your fruits lying around. That's probably a good tip.
Lesson learned. If you buy fruits, eat it within a couple days or when there's no mold growing on it. Well, anyways, thank you so much for sharing. Great having you. Is your song on TikTok by chance? Like one of those sound clips?
Funnily enough, like, this song is kind of old. It's like 2019, 20. I can't remember. But yeah, TikTok wasn't as much of a thing back then. So I never really promoted on TikTok. And now I do completely different music also. So it's kind of funny.